Welcome back to another great game of CEDH. Today we have a super sweet game played over on Bear Claymore's Twitch channel, so definitely go check him out. But starting us off is Hidden on Tymna Dargo. Mardu Summer might just be back, as this is a fast turbo list aiming to sacrifice a bunch of stuff and combo off with either Dargo or Underworld Breach. Next up is Maestro from the Blue Collar Commander crew on Vivi. This is the second coming of Niv Mizzet, letting you basically go infinite with a curiosity type effect to ping the table down and draw you a whole bunch of cards. Also, Maestro did mull to 4 this game. In the third spot, we have Wild from Sleeves and Dweebs on Marneus. It's all about them tokens. So if you want to just play the Smothering Tide deck, this is the list for you. And bringing up the rear is Bear on Derevi. This is a highly efficient bird that gets to abuse cards such as Preston, Gaia's Cradle, and the One Ring.
Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board.
Hidden starts off the game shocking in a Godless Shrine for a turn 1 mana vault. Maestro has a tap Mistrise Village. Wild plays and cracks a Flooded Strand for a Scrubland, but passes it there. Bear has a Tundra into a Lotus Petal. Still not done, he casts a Mox Opal into a Mox Amber. Finally ending his turn with a Mystic Remora, which does get a response as Wild vamps, finding a card to put on top as the fish resolves. Hidden decides he's not going to worry about that fish, as he plays out a City of Brass and taps his vault to help cast an Arcane Signet. Bear will draw off the fish as Hidden casts a Trouble in Pairs, giving Bear another card. Maestro is still in a rough spot as they cast a Preordain. Bear will draw off the fish and will scry one card to the top and the other on bottom, as Maestro draws their card. Also, with this being their second card drawn, this triggers the Trouble in Pairs to draw Hidden a card as well. But it was at least worth it, as they found their land as they end their turn with an island. Wild will draw his tutored card as he plays out a Verdant Catacombs, cracking the fetch to grab out an Underground Sea, tapping out to cast a Voice of Victory. Bear will untap and pay for his fish. He'll then play out a Polluted Delta as land for turn, as he then cracks the fetch for a Tropical Island. He then continues his artifact ramp with the Soul Ring into a Preston the Vanisher. With this being his second spell, Hidden will draw, but the Rabbit resolves, as Bear then ends his turn there. Hidden will take one off his tap vault, and has a City of Traders as land for turn, and debates what to do. He starts off main facing an Orcish Bowmaster, with the ETB pinging the Voice of Victory. Hidden will then use his Floating Colorless on a Soul Ring of his own, not paying for fish, and pinging the Voice once again. Hidden then follows it up with a Seize the Spotlight, although he definitely misread this card, as Bear will draw once again, with Hidden also getting a draw off his Trouble in Pairs, as he then pings down the Voice of Victory. And as I said, I did not read this card well enough, as both Maestro and Wild now vote for Fame, as Bear debates which option he wants, ultimately deciding that without a red mana showing, the Preston is safe to steal. Although he's quickly proven wrong, as Hidden then follows that up with a Burnt Offering. Bear will draw off the fish, but the damage is already done, as Hidden pings Bear with the Bowmaster, and Hidden makes 2 black and 2 red off the sack. Hidden will then cast his Commander Dargo by sacrificing his Vault and Army token to help pay for it, and then ending his turn with a Ragavan. Maestro taps 2 for an Izzet Signet, and at least Vivi will be able to come out next turn, with Bear getting at least a little afraid of the Bowmaster as he chooses not to draw. Wild then starts off his turn with a Dark Ritual, and at least this is a bit more frightening as Bear chooses to draw the card, with Hidden now pinging Wild with the Bowmaster. And Hidden was right to do so, as Wild then casts a Smothering Tide, triggering the Trouble in Pairs and Mystic Remora. With Bear drawing, Hidden will ping Wild and also get to draw another card off his Trouble in Pairs. But even with all of this, the Tithe does resolve. Bear will let his fish go, as he draws for turn and gives a treasure to Wild. And while the fish is gone, Bear still wants more cards, as he casts an Esper Sentinel into a Rhystic Study. This will trigger the Trouble in Pairs and is a force draw, as Hidden will give a treasure to Wild off the Tithe, with Bear then ending his turn with an Otawaro as land for turn. Hidden draws for turn and doesn't have much going on, as he pays for the Tide and then casts his Commander Tymna. He will pay for the Rhystic as the Commander resolves and he has the combat. but before he can declare attackers, Wild sacrifices a treasure to Swords Tymna. He won't pay for either Rhystic or Esper, as Wild makes 2 more treasures, and Hidden will ping the Esper, and Wild with a Bowmaster. But the Swords resolves, as Tymna is exiled, and Hidden gains 2 life. Hidden will then turn Dargo and the 4/4 Orc army and Ragavan at Wild, who takes the hit, exiling Aluris off the top from the Ragavan. Maestro will give a treasure to Wild as they play out a mountain, and for 3, cast their commander Vivi. They give a card to Bear as Hidden continues to ping Wild. Maestro then follows this up with a Wild Ride targeting Vivi. This puts a Vivi, Rhystic, and Trouble in Pairs trigger on the stack. But responding to all of that, Hidden casts a Pyroblast to destroy the Vivi. He won't pay for Rhystic as Bear draws, triggers the Tithe, Bowmaster, and Trouble in Pairs again. Hidden will draw, Wild will take 1 and make 2 treasures off the Tithe. And while Bear did debate interacting here, he ends up letting the Pyroblast go through, taking Vivi out. The rest of the triggers then start resolving, as Hidden draws off his Trouble in Pairs, Bear will draw off the Rhystic, Wild gets pinged, makes 2 more treasures, and then everyone takes 1 off the Vivi trigger as well, unfortunately ending Maestro's turn there. Wild has a Cavern of Souls naming Warrior, as he then taps the land to cast an uncounterable Marneus. Bear chooses not to draw, as Wild then follows that up with the Demonic Tutor. This then puts a Trouble in Pairs and a Rhystic trigger on the stack. But responding to the triggers, Bear casts a Psych Rift to try and bounce the Smothering Tithe back to hand. And it looks like Wild's 1 remaining card is not a counterspell, as the enchantment is bounced. Hidden will then draw off his Trouble, with Bear doing the same, and Wild getting pinged once again. There are no responses to the tutor as Wild goes searching, ultimately finding and casting the One Ring, as he's worried about that Orc army. He'll continue to not pay the 1, although Hidden does miss the draw off the Trouble, as he pings Wild with the Bowmaster. The ring then resolves and gives Wild protection, ending his turn there. Bear then untaps and chooses to activate Derevi's ability to put the bird on the battlefield. There are no responses, as Bear will then use the ETB to untap his Soul Ring, with Wild tapping his ring to draw in response. Hidden will put a damage on Derevi, but the untap is good, as Bear then plays out a Command Tower as land for turn, and follows it up with a Walking Ballista, where X equals 2. This lets him then shoot down the Bowmaster, passing after discarding a Flooded Strand, Utopia Sprawl, Mistrise Village, Faberer Elder, and a Transit Mage due to hand size. Hidden starts off his turn with combat. He sends Dargo and the 10/10 Orc army at Bear, with the Ragavan heading at Maestro. There are no blocks as Maestro exiles a Lightning Bolt off the top of their library, with Hidden then going into the tank on his second main, trying to think if he even has a way of winning through that 1 ring protection right now. But he decides to try and find out as he casts a Silence, exiling a Simian Spirit Guide to pay for the Rhystic. Unfortunately, with Wild shutting it down with a mental misstep, giving a card to Bear as well. And Hidden got way too in his head as the Silence is countered and he passes it there, totally forgetting about the Lightning Bolt in exile. Maestro then untaps and casts a Solve the Equation. They give a card to Bear and end up searching out a Jeska's Will for next turn. Wild will untap and take 1 off his ring.
So I can attempt to wheel and then get us some hands to deal with Bear.
I wouldn't say no to that.
It's probably just going to load everybody up.
With the table agreeing and Wild putting a Windfall on the stack. Bear draws off the Rhystic and then fires off a Fierce Guardianship. Wild will respond by tapping his ring to draw 2 and trigger the Trouble, to give Hidden a card as well. But there are no further responses as the Windfall is countered, as Wild then ends his turn sending Marneus at Bear for 6. With Bear at his end step casting an Eladamri's Call. He gives a card to Hidden off the Trouble as he searches out an Emil to hand. But still in end step, Hidden will cast a Final Fortune, paying for the Rhystic, and additionally also flashing in Ophelia, also paying the 1, as Bear then uses his last counter on the Ballista to take out Ragavan. Hidden then moves to his extra turn and floats 2 mana off his City of Traders, before playing out a Bloodstained Mire. He'll crack the fetch for a Badlands and YOLOs it with a Peer into the Abyss, targeting himself. He'll give a card to Bear, but it looks like the coast is clear, as Hidden is able to draw 37 cards and drops to 17 life. He then casts a Chrome Mox and feeds another card to Bear, which gives him a card back as well from his Trouble in Pairs. Hidden will imprint a Goblin Welder and then tap the rock to a Rite of Flame. Bear draws again, as Hidden has colorless and 2 red floating. A Dark Ritual then comes out as Bear draws, and Hidden gains 3 black mana to add to his pool, with an Underworld Breach then being put on the stack. Bear draws and then fires off a Mindbreak trap, to which Hidden responds with the Deflecting Swat. Bear draws once again, but doesn't have anything as the breach resolves, and I will apologize in advance. I totally forgot about the Pyroblast or Silence in my graveyard, which would have made things much easier. But regardless, Hidden then gambles. Bear draws as Hidden then finds a card and randomly discards an Ancient Den, following it up with the Lion's Eye Diamond. Bear draws and then fires off a Force of Negation, pitching a Mockingbird, and Hidden originally thought Bear got him as he is out of red mana, but he now realizes he in fact has cards left in his graveyard, as he escapes out a Burnt Offering from earlier. He sacrifices his Dargo and uses his colorless to pay for the Rhystic. Hidden will then gain 4 red and 3 black, which allows him to escape the Pyro to counter the Force. He will pay the 1, and the LED resolves. Hidden then can re-Pyro the Rhystic, and after a few recasts of LED, he can cast a Molten Duplication and a Dualcaster Mage to copy the spell and give Hidden infinitely hasty wizards, which lets him take out the table, winning Hidden the game. Game review. Well, that's one of the reasons I love CEDH so much, because who doesn't love being able to Final Fortune over a winning turn? Granted, I don't know if I would have went for it there had I not seen Bear tutor out the Emil. Although I felt so lucky that even after all the cards we fed him, he wasn't loaded up with counter magic. Thanks to everyone that joined for the game, and before everyone leaves, I want to thank our special Patreon members, Slyfox and Holy Septic, for the support of the channel, along with all of our other Patreon supporters as well. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.